Zenna, and I'm the Chief Executive of Dallaglio RugbyWorks. I've worked here for about a year now, and it really is my absolute passion. We work with young people who've been excluded from school, and we work with them on an intensive programme that aims to change the odds that they have of being employed or in training or education when they're 18 from 54% because they've been excluded to 96%. And that's what we exist to do. And I'd like to welcome you to our first Dallaglio RugbyWorks podcast. Our founder, Lawrence Dallaglio, podcasts all the time, but for us as an organisation, it's number one. And we decided, as it's so close to the end of the Euros that Women's England team won, that we might have a little bit of a focus on the impact that we think in other sports women in England winning the Euros might have had. And I am delighted to welcome my two guests for this first podcast. I've got Brittany Lewis, a keen rugby player, but to my own point of view, much more importantly, a key member of staff within Dallaglio RugbyWorks, who not only delivers in our Welsh team, but also started our young women's programme there. And to Zainab Alema, who is known as the bulldozer. She is a force to be reckoned with in the rugby world. She plays rugby for her passion. Her profession is as a nurse, but as a neonatal nurse. But what I'm going to kick off by doing is asking them both just to say a little bit about themselves, a little bit about their connection to rugby, and a little bit about their aspirations and dreams. So I'm going to start with you, Zainab, also known as Z, if we call you Z. Tell me a little bit about your connection to rugby.
Yeah, thank you for that introduction. I think you did better than I could have, if I'm honest with you there, Zenna, so amazing. So my connection to rugby, it's a massive part of my life, but I don't think I realised that until after. I got into rugby through school. It's my PE teacher that got me into it, and I've literally never looked back since then. I think it was a cliche moment, sort of holding the rugby ball for the first time at the age of 14, and at a PE session, just running through people, I just thought to myself, where's this sport been in my life? And yeah, that was the introduction, and literally never looked back since then.
Fantastic. And is it true to say that you are one of the few female rugby players who plays in a hijab?
Yeah, I would say that we're very far and few in between. I would say I'm probably the most prominent and visible within the championship. So yeah, whenever people think about rugby players and hijabs, I think I'm probably the first one to think of. And on top of that, being a Black woman as well, there's all these different intersectionalities of my identity that do make me stand out, but I definitely embrace that, that difference, and I'm confident within my identity, and I'm sort of really grounded in who I am. So I love it when people, people recognise me because I'm different. I actually enjoy that.
Oh, that's brilliant. And Brittany, we will also know you as Brit, just getting in the nicknames there from the offset. Tell me a little bit about your relationship with rugby, and a little bit about Dallaglio RugbyWorks.
Hello, I'm Brittany. I'm a coach at Dallaglio RugbyWorks in Wales. I was very lucky enough that when I was in secondary school, rugby was an option for me. So during my later years in secondary school, I started playing for my team. We played a lot of sevens, went to Rosslyn Park and won, which was good. We were the first rugby team in our school to win Rosslyn Park, and it wasn't the boys, so we all enjoyed that. And yeah, we've been doing a lot of work with the Us Girls programme here in Wales, in conjunction with Street Games. And yeah, it's just brilliant to see so many young girls learning a new sport and actually realising, oh, this is an option for me. So yeah.
Fantastic. So I'm going to come to you both. Women's football, we've just run the Euros, which I'm personally delighted about, having played football more than the fact I've ever played rugby. But I'm really interested I'm going to start with you, Britt, but both as a woman, what do you think it means that women won the Euros, an English team won the Euros, but also as a Welsh woman, do you think it makes any difference to you, your sport, your country, that the women won the Euros?
Yeah, I mean, as a Welsh woman, I wasn't really supporting England. I was supporting Germany, but we'll keep that on quiet. But yeah, I think just the exposure in the media of women playing sport, and yeah, it's UK wide. I mean, Northern Ireland, they qualified for the first time, I think, ever to the European Championship. So yeah, I think it does really promote women's sport. And as I said earlier, it just shows young girls, oh, that's not just for boys. I can do that too if I wanted to. So yeah, I think it's really great exposure in the media for not just women's football, but women's sport in general.
What about you, Z?
Yeah, I definitely echo what Britt said there about the visibility, and because actually the morning after they were actually, I'm not really a football fan, to be honest with you, but I've never actually watched women's football until this tournament. And I remember watching the semi-finals when they beat Spain, and I was just in awe. I was like, oh, I've been missing out big time. And I think since then I've just become a new fan. So I mean, the whole experience definitely converted me to a football fan. And I now even know the names of the players, which I never knew like a month ago. So that's definitely one thing it's done. And I remember waking up and going to the shop to go and buy milk the next day. And I walked past the newspaper aisle and it was just like flooded with like, women winning the Euros, the photos, the celebrations. And I was like, this is just amazing. It kind of really felt like a massive shift. I kind of felt like there's a vibe going on, like this is big and we may not know the impact right now. And there's actually what happens after. We'll look back and be like, that was a big moment, and we lived to see that moment. And I also saw something on social media that said, the boys couldn't bring it home, but the girls did, and it did make me chuckle. But it's true, and I think we deserve it, not just the football team, but just women in general in sport. And I know definitely since the win, the tickets of the Red Roses had skyrocketed. So it's actually had a knock-on effect to how many people are coming to watch the rugby games now. So, you can't beat that.
That's amazing. Was it, Britt, something that was sort of talked about when you went training in your next training rugby session or your next game? Did you feel that crossover in the sport?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, the girls definitely talked about it in our rugby sessions. It's just all over the media. I mean, I'm driving around from session to session. It's on the radio. You've got the exposure is now there. Like, you've got a few players that did an interview on the radio I was listening to on their experience. I think it was after they won. So, yeah, I mean, it's just brilliant.
And do you know what as well? Sorry to jump in there, but so Chloe Kelly, who scored the winning goal, she's actually from my area. Like, she lives in Ealing, so we're both from West London. And she started off at QPR, Queen's Park Rangers, which is literally, if I look at my window, I can see the stadium. So it's so close to home, and to see that she came from my area and then she's gone on to score the winning goal at Euros, that's just mind-blowing, and it's really inspiring.
So there wasn't that much representation from women from Black and minority ethnic backgrounds in the women's team, and that seems to be largely because there hasn't been much investment in training and recruitment from areas of high population for people from Black and minority ethnic communities. And I wondered, I suppose, in particular, what you thought about that. Do you think that's paralleled in rugby, or do you think rugby is actually more inclusive than women's football? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I feel like I did see an article about that. I didn't actually read it though. But I think it's one of those things. I feel like with rugby, when I first started, it was that, only Black woman on my team, only Black girl on my team. I did feel that quite a bit. But as I've sort of gotten older, I feel like the dynamic is changing. And actually, I'm looking like where I play now for Richmond. My coach is a person of color. I've got a couple of people from ethnic minorities on my team, so I'm seeing that diversity coming through, which is amazing. And I guess that means that work is being done to make people of ethnic minorities want to play rugby they want to join. And I think it comes from different angles, you know, role models, I think is a big one, representation, because if someone doesn't feel like they're represented, they may feel less like they belong in a certain environment. So I think representation is key. And I think I'd like to see more Black and ethnic minorities in the England women's team, football wise. And I hope it's something that does get looked into. But ultimately, I think for me, even as a Black Muslim woman, to relate to Chloe Kelly, who's a white woman, but I feel like because we are from similar backgrounds, I can still make that relation with her. But I think it's still important to have that diversity there regardless. So
yeah, I agree. Sorry, I agree. I think it's really important that we have a variety of ethnicities in all major teams. As you said, it's about creating role models and inspiring the next generation. And if you can't see it, you think you can't be it. But yeah, like you said, I think it's really important, and that we should be really giving people opportunities at grassroots levels to become those players. Like on paper, yeah, the England team might have been the best, but have we given everybody the opportunity to become the best?
Yeah, I do think that, and I think that expression, if you can't see it, it's difficult to be it, is a really good one. But I do think also some of this goes back to the need for systemic investment, and actually recognising that you do need to not just sort of think about traditional points of exclusion, but if you take the work that Dallaglio RugbyWorks do, a lot of young people who are permanently excluded from school, that's absolutely the point at which their access to any physical activity stops. And I think we need to be creative about how we continue to include and not exclude. But one of the things I wanted to sort of move on to was this issue of leadership, because quite a lot was made about the skills of Serena as a manager in managing the England team to victory for football in the Euros. And I wonder what your own experiences have been about coaches, managers, team managers, club managers, and whether what sort of importance you put on that. Is that what really has helped drive you, keep you committed to your team or to your club? Or give me your thoughts on the importance of leaders, and whether it's important if they're women, you know, when women are playing in a man's sport, or whether that makes any difference at all. Kick me off with that one, Britt.
Thinking about it, I've not actually had a female rugby specific coach. I mean, I've had teachers in school that did a bit of rugby but then dropped out a bit. But yeah, I've not actually had a female coach. So I don't really have the experience of comparing them both. But yeah, I mean, all coaches are volunteers, and I don't want to knock the ones that are giving up their time, especially if they're men and they're taking an interest in being allies to the female game. But yeah, I definitely think that it might make younger girls feel more comfortable to take part. I mean, being a coach myself, when I feel like I can relate to the young girls in a way that a male counterpart might not be able to, and inspire them to take part. Yeah, I think it's really important, as we said, about diversity. Again, having diverse staff members, and it's, again, I think a leader is a role model. Like, you want to become them, and you want to like, they inspire you, don't they? They lead you, they inspire you. So yeah, I think diversity, whether it's like male, female, or ethnic background, is really important in leadership.
I mean,
Brilliant.
for me,
what about you, Zee?
Yeah, I think spot on, Britt. I think diversity in general is really important. And lucky for me, I've had a female coach actually. My previous coach was female, and I'm trying to think. I think it was great. I enjoyed having a female coach. I think there were things that I feel like, I think just her being female, instantly I kind of felt like I could relate to her. So that was a good thing. But there's certain things I think sometimes within women in sport that you might be easier or more comfortable to speak to a coach about, like things like periods, for example. It's quite a I think it's been a topic of interest more recently. I think actually even between. So things like shorts, wearing white shorts to play rugby, that's sort of been a topic of discussion. Someone did say apparently other sort of teams are looking, I know a team that's actually changed the colour of their shorts so that the girls and the women are more comfortable in playing rugby, especially when they're on their period. So things like that, that sort of subject matter, I think having a female coach is just easier to have that conversation with, because they can relate to you, understand your sort of worries and concerns. So yeah, I think there's certain things that I guess it's just easier to have a female coach, but like Britt said, you're not knocking the male down. I think they do great jobs as well. So again, it goes back to just having that pool of diversity and making sure everyone is included in the game that we all love.
But I do think that's a really, you know, important point about that sense that the person that is leading you, whether it's your manager or your coach, actually understands what you're going through every month with your period, and the fact that you know, you might trip over your feet 1 week in 3. But that doesn't actually mean you're a bad rugby player or football or hockey or any other sports that are often seen as more traditionally male sports, particularly at competition level. I'm going to bring you on to the slightly more political point, that there has been a big campaign to ensure parity in prize money, over competition prize money, between men and women in football. Where's that debate in rugby, and what do you think about it, and what do you think about the professionalisation? Because on the professional fees, salaries, there is a massive difference in most sports. Where are your thoughts with that? Why don't you kick me off, Zee?
Yeah, I think personally, I know there's a massive disparity between prize money between the women and the men's game. I'm not quite sure if they actually do, like for example, the TikTok's Women's Six Nations. I'm not sure if they do get prize money or how much they do get if they do, but I think absolutely they should. If their men are getting it, why shouldn't the women get it? And I think they deserve it, especially the Red Roses. They've won back-to-back Grand Slams. They're literally at the top of their game. They're literally now the best, I would say the best women's rugby team. And we're looking to actually hopefully come away with the win in the World Cup. So I think they've done everything to deserve prize money. So I think they should get it, in my opinion. What do you think, Britt?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, they're putting in the same amount of effort, the same time. They're working just as hard as the men. Playing devil's advocate, I do understand that possibly the men bring in more money, so that's why there's a bit of a discrepancy.
Went to watch the women's Euro final. Yeah. There's no way that anybody could have brought in more money. You know, just get your ticket prices right for that.
No, yeah.
So I mean, I agree with you both. I think it is, you have to balance a commercial opportunity, but it cannot be that, exactly as you said, Britt, the women put in the same amount of work and earn a third, a tenth of what the men are earning. We've got to do something about that.
No, I think I saw a stat that the 3 top attended football matches this year so far have all been female football matches. I think it was Barcelona were the other 2 most attended, and then obviously the final then for the Lionesses. So as you said, like, I think as well, this is a big opportunity for brands to realise the potential in women's sport and to jump onto it, because we're only just getting started. We've got like a bit of a catching up to do on the men. So this is the time to like invest in women's sport.
Oh, I absolutely agree.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And I think people need to realise that even in rugby, we're sort of like, I think it's 25 years behind the men. So we're not like going to be up to their level just yet, but it's about funding and investment. And you don't put your money in something and you wake up the next day expecting to be rich. It's about building the relationship, building sort of the investment, and hopefully in years' time you'll reap what you sowed. So I think just look at it in that perspective, like give us time, give us the money, give us the investment, and we will prove that, you know, we can, you know, give you your returns.
I completely agree. And it wouldn't be right not to mention the World Cup next year, because it's the Women's World Cup as well. Obviously, Britt, you're going to say Wales are going to win.
Yeah,
And you're going to say, sorry?
Yeah.
It's this October, this
Sorry.
October is coming up, and yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing it. Wales and England are in different pools, luckily, to begin with, but yeah, we'll see how it goes.
So yeah, this October, I think, did I say 23? Whichever year it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, so when the World Cup kicks off, what would be your message to people who are thinking about, because you've got the Men's World Cup and you've got the Female World Cup, what would you say to people to say, give me one game? What would be your message about them actually watching women's rugby? What are they going to see that they don't see when they watch the Men's World Cup? What would be your message if you were in charge of advertising to get viewers to the Women's Rugby World Cup?
I would probably say the passion, because these women in Wales specifically have gone into it not expecting it to be their full-time job, not expecting like, oh, I want to be a rugby player as my job. They've just gone into it loving the sport, giving up their own time, working, 2 jobs as well as training full-time, and now they've got their opportunity to show what they can do as full-time professionals. So it's only just the start.
And what would you say, Zee?
Yeah, definitely. I definitely agree with Britt. And just to come and see the skill level as well. And, I think it's absolutely incredible when I watch the women play. And like Britt said, a lot of us are juggling other things, a lot of the elite players, some of them, some of them are mums. I know the likes of one of the back rows in England, she's a mum. And having to train day in and day out while she got little. I know because I've got 3 kids. So even that, I think that's just amazing. And I think it's just one of those things. It's just an opportunity to showcase the talent and the depth. I think the depth within the squad is just incredible. And it's a family environment. I know even with the Euros, a lot of feedback that I was hearing was that when you went to the matches, it was like kids, like loads and loads of kids. People were just in fantastic moods. There was no fighting. There was no one throwing beer all over the place. It was just a really nice family day out, and I think that's what you get from the women's game, not just in football, but I think across all sports. I think you do get that family fun vibe, so I think definitely one should buy a ticket to any women's match and definitely give it a go for the sake of the atmosphere.
Absolutely. You go to a women's sport, and I particularly think it's true of rugby, but also football. So those sports that are traditionally seen more as men, when you've got women excelling at them, you go to the games and you feel the love. You palpably feel it coming off the pitch, and you feel it in the people, the strangers you're stood next to. In a way, I think we've lost in some men's sport. And I think that would be my message, is come and feel the love of the game, the love of the person you're standing next to, and the love of winning. Because my goodness me, women are competitive. And a final question to you both, and Britt, this is ridiculous because you're still so young, but I just want the one thing that you've only got one thing to say to a young person stood in front of you. Question is, should I be in sport? How are you going to get them over the line to yes, you should? What's your one piece of advice to young women? Because they're caught up in body image. They don't want to play. They think they're going to look like idiots. None of their mates are playing. What's your advice to get them to give it a go? Come and pick up a rugby ball, or maybe kick a football. What's your advice?
To me, sport is just like one big family. I know it might sound cliche, but genuinely, my teammates are like my family. I can go with them to any problem. I see them on the weekend. If I've got an issue, I know I can call on them. Just like I rely on them on the pitch, I rely on them in life as well. So it's like, if you want to take part in sport, you are going to be part of a family. And yeah, that's how I would try and get them into sport.
Wonderful. See?
Yes, I think for me, I'll talk about the values that sport brings, especially with rugby, you know, the sportsmanship, the discipline, the respect, the enjoyment, and those sort of values that you learn being in a sporting environment on the pitch and playing. You can transfer those skills into your everyday life, you know, and I think as a young person, it's one of those skills that if you have from playing a sport, when you go out into the big wide world and you want to get a job and you want to make relationships, that's key, absolutely key, knowing how to communicate, knowing how to manage your emotions. You get that from playing sport. So yeah, I'll definitely say, in regards to values, it'll teach you a lot and help you to become a better version of yourself.
Amazing. And can I thank you both so much for talking to me? It's been an absolute honour and a privilege. And you are both inspirational women who are no doubt absolutely making your mark on the field, but also making the mark on the next generation. Thank you for your time. And for those of you who've listened, thank you for listening to our first Dallaglio RugbyWorks podcast.